Hi there.
Hey, Paul, how are you?
Good. So I just wanted to thank you for spending time with our interns. We have 29 student interns, and some of them wanted the attorney generals and clerks to Supreme Court justices. And I told them about you and how you managed my first campaign for town supervisor. And without you, I never would have been town supervisor. And I also told them about the remarkable career you've had as a clerk to Justice Ginsburg, as a law school dean. And I told them the difficulties of running for attorney general against somebody who was a well-known had a well-known family in Colorado, and Judith is our town clerk and is organizing the intern program. And I thought maybe you could tell everybody a little bit about yourself and answer some questions. And really appreciate you spending time with us.
Hello.
It's such a pleasure.
Thank you for being our guest speaker, and we're just very excited to meet you. Thank you.
It's an honor. So I take it we've got a range of individuals, some of whom might be looking at law school, others, all sorts of different occupations. I'm really excited to have a conversation with all of you. As Paul noted, I was where some of you were in college, interested in politics and government. My first job when I graduated was working for Nita Lowey, who was then Congresswoman. I was her fundraiser. I started off on the campaign as a volunteer, and then I started doing fundraising and was the only person doing it. And then I got to manage Paul's campaign, which was a wonderful experience. For people who don't have the perspective I do on Paul, we first met when he was going door to door. Actually met my mom when he was running to be in the county legislature. And he would often have, Paul, do you still have office hours in the supermarket?
No, but now I do bike calls. I bicycle around and I stop everybody walking, and I ask people what I could do to help them. In fact, a couple weeks ago, somebody said that they had a daughter who was disabled, and we got her a chairlift donated from them. So I do that every single day for about 2-3 hours.
Well, that was Paul's MO then, that's his MO now, and that's the spirit that I also take, which is how do we help people? We're at a time when there's a lot of distrust in government, a lot of distrust in our institutions, and it's important as we try to find our way forward to build trust. And that comes from people leading with their best authentic selves and working together to solve problems. I'll talk about a few of the ones I'm working on as Attorney General, but mostly I want to have a discussion with you all. First, let me talk about the opioid epidemic. Second, let me talk about water, which is a big issue out here in Colorado. And then third, I'll talk a little about public safety. So first, the opioid epidemic. This has touched so many families, lives, and communities. And it started in the boardroom around early to mid 90s. A company known as Purdue Pharma, owned by the Sackler family, developed Oxycontin as a opioid they were going to market for treating pain. And what they didn't tell people was how highly addictive it was. Today, 70 to 80% of the people who are using heroin started out using those prescription pills. And what is important to know about this is it has had a devastating effect. If you look at our jails in Colorado, some of our more rural communities, 90% of people in the jails are addicted to opioids and struggling with their addiction. So we're suing these companies and we're getting settlements, and we're going to use that money to fund opioid drug treatment, recovery, education, prevention efforts. A lot I can say about that, but I'll leave that there for now. Second, on water, you all are growing up in a world that will be transformed by climate change. Climate change is having so many effects. A concept that's worth thinking about, happy to talk more about, is resilience. How do we maintain all sorts of systems you hear this a lot in the cybersecurity area, when they have to face all sorts of pressures. How we maintain our water management system in Colorado is now a huge challenge because of climate change. And this, you hear about wildfires and you hear about floods and you hear about droughts. All of it is because of the weather patterns changing so radically. We used to have natural snowpack that would go well into the summer as a way of regulating our water because it would be more slowly melting. That's not happening anymore. It's melting much more quickly, putting pressure on our water management to build better systems, which could include how we build storage systems to store water so we have when we need it, or the ability to conserve water so we don't use it too much when maybe it's not there, and then also be creative about how we reuse it. This resilience idea, I mentioned cybersecurity an area. People have to have computer systems that are built to be resilient to withstand cyber attacks. Also electric power. Think about what happened in Texas where they weren't able to have power for a few days because they hadn't built resilient systems. So for us, water is a big area for resilience, but we care about electricity and cybersecurity too. And finally, public safety. This is a crucial point because in order to have public safety, we also have to have trust in law enforcement, which means we need to have smart, effective policies that we train law enforcement officials who are trustworthy. We train people how to engage in ethical decision-making to lead with empathy. We also have to make sure that we're looking at our system with an innovative perspective. We're not putting people just in jail because, for example, they can't afford cash bail. New York has worked to adapt its system of cash bail. New Jersey has done what is a national model. They cut back on their jail population by 40% with no increase in crime. But there are a lot of other ways in which our system of public safety deserves our attention, thinking about how we help people re-enter society after they serve in prison, their sentence. If they don't have a job, they're, in Colorado, at least 50% likely to end up back in prison within 3 years. Where you have a job, it's less than 10%. So there are a range of challenges that I'm facing as Attorney General. As I work to address all of them, I do it really as part of a team. We have an office of 550 people with important work around a range of legal issues, and also all across our state. I often say our democracy is a team sport, something I learned and appreciated from Paul, and I want to help encourage others to go in public service. And it's great to have so many interns thinking about that. So let me stop my remarks there and welcome thoughts, questions, and ideas.
Remember, you have to come up to the podium.
Anyone, if you could come up with questions.
Hi, I'm Zach. Very nice to meet you. So Mr. Feiner informed us that the last three New York governors were actually also elected to the Attorney General position previously. Why do you think that is? Is there a trend there? What are the different factors for that?
That's a very good question. Let me give you a few different answers to the question. The first one is that when you are Attorney General, you represent all parts of the state, from the human welfare system to environmental oversight to economic development, which gives you this broad exposure to state government. Many people, having had that exposure, are willing to go from the legal role, serving as the legal counsel to the state, to being the chief executive officer of the state. So that's one practical answer. A second answer is a little bit more about the competencies it takes to be Attorney General or to be a lawyer. Part of what many people underestimate, but I think you've picked up through this analysis, is that lawyers are often skilled and trained to be leaders, which lends themselves to running for governor or potentially serving other leadership positions. Lawyers are the one who are often leading the meetings, who are making sure we get things done. And so I'm a big fan of legal training as preparation for leadership more generally. And then third, I think there's a political answer to your question as well, which is when you're Attorney General, you run statewide. And if you do a good job, you get to know the people of your state. That puts you in a position to run for other statewide offices. My predecessors have done a range of different activities. Ken Salazar did go on to be a US Senator. John Suthers is now actually mayor of Colorado Springs, but that's also executive leadership. So we'll see. I'm running for re-election now, so I have to get reelected before I worry about whatever I might do after this job.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Sasha, and I was wondering if you could give us a little bit of insight into the sort of structure and administration of the Attorney General's office as you're like the head of it.
Thanks, Sasha. The office I mentioned is 550 people. They're divided up into 9 different areas. One is community engagement, which seeks to run a few different programs. For example, we have a Safe to Tell program in our office where young people can call with threats that are facing students. We're also working on an opioid response program that's in our community engagement. Then we have state services, which represents a number of our offices here, state government. Employment and litigation, which does counseling on employment matters and also defends the state in all sorts of litigation. We have our natural resources and environment, which protects our land, air, and water. Our criminal justice section, which does a number of work related to public safety and criminal prosecution that we do sort of white collar mostly. Criminal appeals handles all criminal appeals for the state. Our consumer protection section, our business and license section, which deals with a bunch of the regulatory agencies protect consumers, and our revenue utilities section, which deals with Department of Revenue, also some utilities regulation. So that covers a lot of ground because we represent all state government. And within those units, they're both lawyers and non-lawyers, about call it 325 lawyers, 225 non-lawyers. And we've got a lot of responsibility to serve the people of Colorado. And so it's worth noting, in fact, I've got 3 jobs. One is leading an office of 550 people. Second is making legal and policy decisions representing the people of Colorado. And third, I am an elected official. And so I am accountable to the people and I need to make sure I'm engaged with the people of Colorado.
Okay, anyone who has a question, it's okay to just move into position to have access to the mic, okay?
Hi, my name is Noe Benitez.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Weiser. Before I came to work this morning, I read that you worked on the Obama administration.
The antitrust division. I'm just curious if you could tell us more about that, especially as that issue seems to have become even more pertinent recently.
Great question. So my career, I'll give you the arc. I started, like I said, working with Paul on that campaign and his transition. And then I was in law school and I clerked for both a judge here in Colorado and then Justice Ginsburg and Justice White at the US Supreme Court. My first job after 2 years of clerking was to work for then the head of the antitrust division, Joel Klein. As you noted, I went back under President Obama to be a deputy assistant attorney general in the Justice Department's antitrust division. And antitrust law right now is playing a very important role because we're seeing an economy with more and more concentration and with less and less competition. And that's really concerning because it hurts consumers. And so I'm actually, my current job, also an antitrust enforcer and one of the leads of our case against Google. We're also active on other fronts in the antitrust area. So it's a important part of my work. I could go on about antitrust law if people have questions. And if you go to my website, which is coag.gov, you can go back and look at prior speeches and see my testimony to the antitrust subcommittee about what we have to do in antitrust law.
So I would just say, I'm going to call up a representative from each group that's working on a video. the interns are working on 4 different videos. One that has to do with environmental sustainability, another one with cybersecurity, the proper disposal of chemical waste and what can happen in a world where people just stop getting rid of waste products in an appropriate manner. And what's the other one? 4th one. Social media addiction and coming up with healthy alternatives for young people as to how to manage social media. So what tips, given those 4 videos and given your role, your leadership position, your global understanding of each of those areas, what tidbits of information or questions would you share with them that would help enrich and enhance their videos?
Okay, so I think I got 3. I'm not sure I got the 4th. So one is sustainability, one is addiction,
Cybersecurity
cybersecurity, and what was the 4th one?
and the disposal of chemical and electronic waste.
Okay. Waste disposal, I'm going to take a pass because I am not doing a lot of work in that area. So I'll stick with the other 3. Cybersecurity is incredibly important, and we're thinking long and hard on it. I'd start with the principle I mentioned earlier, resilience, which means we have to both prevent cyber attacks and be able to withstand cyber attacks. If you go to the federal government, there's now an effort to create awareness and norms around several critical ways to protect ourselves. I would look at those coming from the National Security Council and the Deputy National Security Council advisor who's focused on cybersecurity, and also the Department of Homeland Security. A lot of these technologies are available, aren't necessarily being widely used, leaving some governments even and businesses vulnerable to cyber harms. And then there are also practices, of course, as I said, if you are subject to an attack, how do you keep your data available, backed up? It is a major challenge. I can go more if people have questions. Second, behavioral health and addiction. This is an area where there's a lot of work that can be done, particularly for young people. There has been rising addiction, including vaping. In Colorado, we've seen high potency marijuana. Obviously, I talked about opioids. One question I would leave you with, because you're positioned to understand it, is what makes for an effective education and effective prevention program? If people could avoid starting to take these pills or other substances, their lives are going to be better for it. How do we get that message through, and how do we open up conversations so those who are struggling are willing and able to say, I'm struggling? It was a milestone this week, Simone Biles saying, my mental health is not in good shape. I need to take time for myself. People often aren't open about talking about their mental health. We need those conversations. Finally, sustainability. Our natural resources need to be managed smartly and carefully. And unfortunately, we haven't always thought about sustainability as part of how we operate. And this gets to our respective carbon footprints and other ways we live our lives. There's lots of ways you can get at this from sort of local and broader perspectives. I would encourage you to find ways to address the issue that, again, touch people maybe in a day-to-day life. How do they live their lives? What are individual practices that could be improved from how we use water or energy or what have you? So that's a little bit of my guidance as you take on these projects. I think it's great you guys are doing this. And one of the things I would encourage you is whatever you produce from this, keep it. It's part of your professional portfolio. You'll be able to use it throughout your life to show people what you are capable of doing.
I had a question relating to a new, the state legislature legalized marijuana, and communities have the ability of opting out. We have till the end of the year. Some communities are opting out temporarily because they want to get more information. Colorado was one of the first communities that legalized marijuana, and there's dispensaries all over. Would you have any advice? This is going to definitely be a controversial issue in the town of Greenburgh, probably in the fall, because we're going to have some meetings, and I'm wondering if you would have some advice for myself and the town board how to deal with it. You're familiar with Greenburgh, and some of the river villages may be concerned about having marijuana dispensaries or stores on the main streets, say in Hastings or Ardsley or anywhere. And again, what would be the responsible approach that we should take?
So there's a lot there. And I will tell you, I don't know that that's a project that anyone is working on, but I will tell you there's a lot you can do looking at what we've done in Colorado and elsewhere. First, I want to say the policy of putting people in jail or prison for buying or selling marijuana, I think, has been appropriately viewed as a failed policy. Those individuals were not really a threat to public safety. And making sure we use our jails and prisons for people who are really a threat to public safety, for me, is where our true north should be. And so that's the first step of, call it decriminalization. The step of legalization, allowing the sale of regulated marijuana products, is one that there's a lot that goes with it. It's important to note that the product should be, and I believe the New York system will encourage it to be, closely regulated. Marijuana obviously can be dangerous, particularly I mentioned before the high potency levels. One issue to be aware of is if kids can get access to it while their brains are still developing, it's really concerning. We just passed a law here in Colorado trying to stop that practice from happening. The other issue to be aware of is going to be driving under the influence, trying to find ways to test people for driving while under the influence of marijuana. That is also a concern that's worth being aware of. In terms of where it's sold, one of the challenges, if you don't sell it in Greenburgh, but it's sold in Yonkers, then Yonkers is going to get the tax revenue from all those sales. And in the Colorado system, I don't know if New York is this way, whoever legalizes in their community also gets to tax it and keeps the tax sale. So a big question is going to be, how do you decide, if you make it legal, where the tax revenues go? That's a really important area. And we've seen in Colorado a number of communities dedicate those funds for example, behavioral health, an area that we don't have enough support. I mentioned earlier the importance of that issue. I also would say there's an issue that's worth thinking about, which is social equity. The individuals who were generally getting sent to jail were often people of color. Are those same people going to have opportunities in this emerging business? I know New York has worked on a framework to address this. That's something else to think about as you move forward in this legalization effort.
That you were working a lot on antitrust law. So I have like a two-part question. One, how do you face such like a massive corporation as Alphabet, which owns Google, like legally? And how do you approach that? And what are the possible solutions for breaking up such such a monopoly?
So first, we start with the concern. And so not long after I was elected, I was talking to other state attorneys general about the concern that Google had developed what we would call monopoly power in the market for internet search and internet search advertising. Monopoly power means the ability to exclude rivals from offering products. And the concern is that Google maintain that monopoly using what antitrust lawyers would call predatory tactics, which means you're not competing on the merits, you're finding a way to cut off a competitor's air supply, which is actually a phrase that was used in the Microsoft case that I actually was able to be at the Department of Justice 25 years ago when it was being brought. So now I am applying what I learned in this case. we need to first show that Google engaged in illegal monopolization. They maintain their monopoly through predatory means. So that's what our complaint outlines. And for example, we talk about Google having a set of restrictive contracts where they seek to lock up the emerging Internet of Things or connected cars world. In the mobile world, Google, for example, paid Apple $10 billion a year so that no rivals could get a foothold in internet search using Apple devices, namely the iPhone. We're now looking at a new world, the Internet of Things world, connected cars. Google's doing the same thing. So we have to be concerned about this risk to competition and about Google's anti-competitive conduct. To your point, if we prove our theory of competitive harm, the question then is, what's the remedy? And we talk about three types of remedies in our complaint. One is illegal practices like the contracts I mentioned, they got to stop. Second, other forms of enabling equal access. And that means if you have a platform, for example, the platform that sells advertising, that Google would provide it on equal terms to others. And then finally, your point, structural relief. Could you require spinning off certain parts of the company? And if you prove that competition has been harmed and the way to restore competition is through structural relief, we're entitled to ask for it. So that's going to be part of our case. It is obviously difficult to pull off, but we've seen it before in US antitrust history where there's been an ability to get structural relief.
I had another question just about your experiences as a clerk for Justice Ginsburg, and how did you get the position? And could you tell us a little bit about Justice Ginsburg?
Happy to. So first off, getting a clerkship is a great thing to do after law school of any type. There's state and there are federal clerkships. They're all wonderful experiences. I would not focus too much on, oh, I want to clerk for the US Supreme Court, because that's like going into Las Vegas and saying, I want to get a jackpot on my first time. It is one that is about luck. And so you can't always plan it. You just have to try it. And then if it works, great. If it doesn't, so be it. Justice Ginsburg is a very special person. She is the most demanding boss I will ever have. She's incredibly thoughtful, was thoughtful, and I learned a ton from her. I don't think I'll ever has been pushed as hard as a lawyer or will be pushed as hard as a lawyer. And if you haven't seen the movies about her, I recommend that. They're true. She's that special.
Marco?
Hi, Mr. Weiser. My name is Marco, and I was wondering, where do you draw the line between the legal view and your personal views on certain?
This is a really important point. Thanks for asking. The rule of law is, to me, essential, which is that you can't have individuals basically doing stuff only because they believe it. You have to believe in the rule of law. And the rule of law means that individuals who are in government are stewards to serve the public according to a system where laws are made appropriately. And if individuals can all just do what they want, you undermine faith in the whole system. And so for me, that is central. And my views don't come into play unless there is a chance to exercise discretion. What legislation should we push for example, or what type of cases do we bring? And so for me, it's critical to separate out discretion, where it's appropriate, versus where are we stewards of the rule of law.
This part so that it allows you to speak.
So do you ever work with other, I guess, attorney general's offices, whether it's other states at the federal level, from the county attorneys, and if so, how does that exactly work?
It's a great question, and the answer is absolutely all the time. A lot of work that happens, for example, on this opioid litigation is with other state attorneys general. And then actually the opioid litigation for the settlements, we're going to need to work with different counties and county attorneys. So I often say, I mentioned this to you guys already, democracy is a team sport. Well, that means not one individual him or herself is able to be fully effective to address a range of problems. It's going to be a team effort, and that is going to require collaboration. And one of the most important skills people can develop is how to work with others. There's a famous saying, which is, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go as part of a team.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's awesome.
One other question. You're in Hastings, and you grew up in Hastings. Could you just briefly tell us about your experiences in the Hastings schools and living in Hastings, and how that prepared you for the job you have right now?
Well, I will tell you, my AP US history teacher, Mr. Robert Tucker, was a very special mentor and helped give me the idea of what it is like to have a mentor. I mentioned both Nina Lowy and Paul as two others who I had the real blessings of getting to know and learn from. I also was the leader of, I don't know if it's still going on, but West Monk, which was a Model UN tournament, where I ran the Model UN tournament, and it was probably one of my first leadership positions organizing. And so Hastings really got me off to my start. And I went off to Swarthmore College and continued in that area, and then came back to Hastings. I was a precinct leader with my mom and got involved in campaigns there. So I owe Hastings a lot. And I think I've now been inducted into the Hastings Hall of Fame too, for whatever that's worth.
And I really want to thank you for everything you've done and making yourself aware. Next summer, if any student, you have an internship program also.
We do have an internship program. People should feel free to apply.
Great. We really appreciate your time and good luck. And I told everybody I wouldn't be surprised if you're one day on the Supreme Court. So
I don't know about that, but I'm enjoying doing what I'm doing now and encourage everyone to pursue their public service dreams and journeys. So
thank you. And thanks
thank you all. Take care now.
Thank you.